Senator Smith, welcome to Atlanta. I wonder if we could start talking, if you could introduce yourself to the community and tell us a little bit about your background and where you came from and how you got here.
First of all, I'm just coming off of a political appointment as a senator in the Bahamas, and also as a parliamentary secretary in the office of the Prime Minister in Freeport. And basically, as a parliamentary secretary, I had a portfolio, and my portfolio was to really run the office of the Prime Minister in Freeport, as well as I had responsibilities for Bahamas Information Service, which is the government information service, and I also had responsibilities for the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas, which is a state-run television and radio station. I don't know if you know much about the way we do things in the Bahamas. I think in the United States, senators are elected. However, in the Bahamas, senators are appointed. And as an appointed senator, I was also appointed a parliamentary secretary. And the way that you are a parliamentary secretary, you're either a senator or you're a member of the House of Assembly. So those were the things that I was doing prior to this appointment as Consul General for Atlanta.
Did you, were you born in the Bahamas?
Born in Freeport, Grand Bahama, well, West End, Grand Bahama. West End is a small fishing village just about, I suppose, a couple of miles outside of the city of Freeport. You know, Freeport is really the business and industrial area of Grand Bahama Island. Grand Bahama Island is considered the second city, Nassau being the capital. And Freeport has a peculiar arrangement with the Grand Bahama Port Authority, which is a private entity that basically drives the running of the city as well as the economic and business development. And it started with a 50-year-old agreement called the Hawksbill Creek Agreement. And there's some information here you'll get to read about that, but we have a very unusual way that we do business, which is very different from anywhere else in the Bahamas.
What was it like growing up in the Bahamas? People think of it as being paradise. When you grow up as a child in the Bahamas, do you think of it as paradise, or is it just home?
Well, it's home, and nobody you probably don't take advantage of the, the water. People come and they say, you have the beautiful beaches in the world. But when they're at your fingertips, or at your toes, I guess I should say, you don't always appreciate what you have. But we do have some of the best beaches in the world. So growing up in life in the Bahamas, for me as an individual, was just like home. We did the same things that you do everywhere else. You go to school. You desire to go to college, and a lot of times many people went to school outside of the country, even though we do have a college in the Bahamas called College of the Bahamas, which is moving to university status.
Did you stay in the Bahamas for school, or did you leave?
No, I attended a primary school, which was Catholic. I attended a high school that was also Catholic, and then I went to school in Florida, in Palm Beach. A lot of Grand Bahamians gravitate to West Palm Beach because it was only about 60 miles from West End, really. So you find that a lot of Bahamian students do get to go away to school in Florida, other parts of the United States, the UK, many places.
And then did you always intend on going back to your home country after you got out of college, or?
Oh, I think so. I mean, I've also had the opportunity to live abroad in Florida for about 6 or 7 years when I worked in the hotel industry. I served as a director of sales and marketing for a small resort in Freeport, Grand Bahama, which now has been sold and is now a part of the Arlucaya Resort. So I think at some point in time you always think that you're going to go back home because you want to make a contribution to your development.
So you were living in Florida and working for the resort in the Bahamas as their marketing
Yes,
director?
and going to school at the same time.
Right.
So, as I said, you always want to make a contribution, so you always in the back of your mind feel you're going to go back home at some point.
Is that an issue with the Bahamas in terms of brain drain, or the students leaving and not coming back?
I think that for the most part that there are a lot of Bahamian professionals living abroad all over the United States, all over the world, and we can use the expertise back home. There's no question about it. But you will find that there are a lot of young professionals who have come back to make a contribution to the development of the Bahamas. But I would be the first to say that there's always a need for young professionals to come back home.
How did you make the leap from working in the tourism industry to politics?
I've always had an interest in communication, and my writing skills and speaking skills have always been somewhat good. And so I think the transition just came when I decided that, I started also doing a lot of PR work, working in campaigns. I've also been the campaign manager for a number of campaigns, organized a number of constituencies. And I think just my interest and ability in communication somehow got me involved in politics.
And then from politics to diplomat.
To diplomat.
Is this your first diplomatic post?
It is. It is.
Could you talk a little bit about why Atlanta was chosen as a location for a consul general?
First of all, the direct flights that we have to the Bahamas, the number of Bahamians that reside in the Atlanta region, which we suspected resided in the Atlanta region.
Do you have an estimate on how many that might be?
We have no idea at
Okay.
this point. What we are hoping to do, though, is to encourage more Bahamians living not only in Atlanta, but in the other 10 states that we have responsibility for. Places like North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, Kentucky, Missouri. All of these states that we have responsibility for, we will be launching a PR campaign to get Bahamians living in these 10 states to register with the consulate office. And I think, when we begin that work and begin that process, we'll have a better idea of just the number of persons that are Bahamians living in these various states.
What would be the advantage of having them register? So basically, you'll know.
Well, first of all, we do provide consular services from this office, visa and passport services for our nationals. And of course, we do provide visa services for those persons needing a visa who wants to travel to the United States, or I'm sorry, to the Bahamas from the U.S. And of course, it's always good to know the students that are here in the area. We also need to know who the Bahamians are, because there are services that we provide for our nationals.
Are there any particular advantages of Atlanta in terms of having a consul general? I know it's only about 800 miles from the Bahamas, and direct flights. Anything else was there?
Well, I think there's a lot of synergy for us. Obviously, part of, as I indicated to you, part of what we're going to be doing is providing consular services for residents and for other persons. But, there is also a part of the job in this office of business development, economic development, trade missions, really looking at what business opportunities may be available here for Bahamians, what opportunities would be available for business persons wanting to make investments overseas, namely in the Bahamas. We brag about a very flexible business environment, with a tax-free kind of structure. And so we want to, in this particular global climate that we're dealing with, there's a lot of need for the promotion of business.
And not just tourism, although tourism is important, you're also looking for other types of businesses?
Of course,
yeah.
Of course. Other opportunities where companies are looking for investments that may be of interest in the Bahamas.
Are there any fields in particular that are emerging in addition to tourism?
Well, tourism has always been there. The financial services continues to be really an important part of our economy. The maritime industry is also emerging. We are the third largest ship registry in the world. So those are the areas that we need to focus on.
I'm sure the tourism's down just there as it is everywhere else. Could you kind of give me a rundown on what the situation is with tourism? And
well, in New Providence, which is the capital, and you would be familiar with, I suppose, Atlantis, which is a very, very large property on Paradise Island. The numbers are down there, like everywhere else in the country. They have experienced some layoffs. We've just had the Four Seasons Hotel in Exuma closed. We've also experienced layoffs in Grand Bahama at the Arlucaya Resort, which is the largest resort currently operating in Freeport. And so like everywhere else, I mean, the major part of our tourism business comes from the United States. And so when you're having this kind of economic downfall in the U.S., obviously we're going to experience it, and we're experiencing it in tourism travel to the Bahamas.